Hello, good afternoon, evening to any and all watching wherever you may be. It is I, Reynard C. Fox. That's Fox with two X's and C as in centrist. And welcome to the first installment of the Weekly Foxtrot. Why upload a video of a weekly news short on a Wednesday, you might ask? Because I'm new at this and quite unprepared. Don't judge, folks. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. So now let's trot our way into the first story covered from an event occurring last week. This last week, from USA Today Online, far-right Proud Boys claim mission success in Antifa protest, vow to hold more monthly rallies. You know, first off, with the title, it's a little misleading. I find it funny how Antifa are made to look like it was their protest. I wonder if USA Today, the MSM, are quite aware that it was the Proud Boys who organized this protest against domestic terrorism, so they say, about 2 months in advance, legally in a civil manner, with the city of Portland. And it was Antifa who counter-demonstrated. Antifa doesn't organize protests or rallies. They only ever seem to come out when it's someone they disagree with. I would keep that in mind. I don't think they've ever organized any protests against domestic terrorism or even against fascism. They just show up whenever it's some other group that's protesting. It's almost as if they're piggybacking. But who am I to judge? Who am I to dictate exactly what they're doing? I'll let you folks be the judge of that. And I'll let Antifa be the judge of everything else if they like. Anyhow, let's get on with the article. The far-right Proud Boys claim success and vow to conduct monthly protests in Portland after a weekend in domestic terrorism rally in Oregon's largest city drew hundreds of condemned anti-fascist Antifa activists. Rose City Antifa, Portland's anti-fascist activist organization, countered with its own demonstration against the Proud Boys, an all-male extremist group condemned by the Southern Poverty Law Center for its ties to white nationalism. Interestingly enough, folks, Antifa is not condemned or even listed by the Southern Poverty Law Center for its ties to hate, bigotry, to violence, to the incitement of violence. And oddly enough, they don't seem to notice or even take into account the fact that countered with its own demonstration, I guess in USA Today's terms and the MSM terms, means breaking out windows of a Proud Boys bus, hitting a guy on the back with a hammer, macing, causing trouble, being arrested, at least 13 people being arrested, and though while CNN seemed to disregard who it was and play dumb as to who it was that got arrested, it's pretty safe to say that Antifa's members were 90% of those arrested. Or people posing as Antifa, I guess. That's the problem when you're a group with black mass. Anybody can fucking dress up as you and pretend you're the same group. Or people are just going to acknowledge you're in the same group, thus doing little, if any, good to the credibility of your movement or organization. I would like to also point out and make a retraction or correction to a previous video, my first video actually done, where I made a point about how peaceful the protests and rallies were, and I would like to state for the record that I do overall think that this last rally, in retrospect, was one of the more peaceful ones. However, it's good to note that it wasn't all entirely peaceful. I saw a video later on of the Proud Boys after their rally exiting on their bus, Antifa attacking it, smashing out windows with a hammer, knocking a guy out in the back with a hammer and spraying members down with bear mace, and also chasing down a journalist and trying to beat him up while the journalist fought them off. That receives condemnation on my part, just as much as if it was the Proud Boys committing the violence and or instigating the violence would receive condemnation on my part. That would also account for the 13 arrests made. However, things being as they are, I think all would agree that this would be one of the more least violent protests and rallies And I would also like to thank and continue seeing support given to the Portland Police Department, and just them only, not to the city of Portland, but the Portland Police Department, because with them, it is very likely that we could achieve a protest or a rally where we don't see any arrests, or at the very least, any violence committed on those peacefully assembling. Portland Police Lieutenant Tina Jones said that 1,200 people representing both sides took to downtown streets, and that at least 13 arrests were made, as I mentioned previously when I was talking about how good of a rally this was, considering that so little violence, although violence did occur, so little didn't actually occur, and only 13 arrests were made. Authorities were mostly able to keep the conflicting groups apart through a series of protests and counter-protests lasting about 9 hours. 6 people suffered minor injuries, Jones said. Now that I will disagree with. I would say the video showcasing the man being knocked out and hit in the back with a hammer, along with bear mace being sprayed into their vehicle, is a little bit more than minor. But of course, the police, being as they are under the rule of thumb of Ted Wheeler, they're going to use as light and as feathery wording as possible to mitigate and minimize the potential damage, or I guess the damage control needed to help with Wheeler's supposed re-election, although he's probably out of his mind if he thinks anything he does now will help him get re-elected. We know that there is a possibility that assaults or other crimes occurred outside of the view of the officers, possibly looting, vandalism, a person getting hit in the back of the hammer, which you again fail to mention. Officers and detectives will be spending the hours and days ahead writing reports, conducting interviews, and pursuing investigations. Again, investigations of outright violence and unprovoked violence at that, assault on a person's vehicle, people trying to pull others out of their vehicles and personal property. Anything in a normal society or a normal city outside of the state lines of Oregon, whereas if you tried to pull a stunt like that, you'd probably get shot. Protest, not protest, peaceful, not peaceful, against terrorism or not against terrorism. Anywhere else, we all know the Proud Boys would have been in the right to have pulled a gun and opened fire, although that is not something I wish to see, nor I think anybody else would wish to see. Proud Boys protest organizer Joe Biggs said his group sought national attention, and they got it. I believe they did, actually. That was just not including President Trump's remarks concerning not the Proud Boys, but Antifa being named a domestic terrorist organization. He noted President Donald Trump's tweets as the protests unfolded. Trump tweeted that Portland was being watched very closely and that the government was considering a plan to name Antifa a terrorist organization, a designation normally reserved for foreign organizations. Well, it's about time that they were named as such. I seem to remember signing a petition that got signatures within the tens of thousands asking Trump and the CIA to declare Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization and be put on the list. And honestly, if the Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer are going to be put under a list by the SPLC as well as the ADL as a hate group, oddly enough, they have to be designated as a hate group and not a terrorist organization. Again, as I pointed out in my last video, it's funny how they are both separate things and they can't list them in the same breath or within the same list. I think it's only fair that Antifa, who is known for inciting violence and throwing Molotovs and explosives and other such malicious intent, why they can't be named as a domestic terrorist organization. The idea is not new. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, last month co-sponsored a Senate resolution that would designate groups and organizations who act under the banner of Antifa to be designated as domestic terrorist organizations. Look at President Trump's Twitter, Biggs said in a tweet that went viral. He talked about Portland Said he's watching Antifa. That's all we wanted. We wanted national attention, and we got it. Mission success. Mayor Ted Wheeler was less pleased at Trump's perspective. He described the contentious rallies as potentially dangerous and volatile. Well, what do you know? Wheeler pointing out something that everyone else pointed out to him back when he was still whitewashing and making Antifa seem to be just a cuddly little teddy bear that only wanted the best for its citizens of Portland, not what they appear to be, vandalous, erroneous felons with no conscience and no empathy and no regard for human life or its safety, as they showcased time and again whenever they show up to other people's protests to piggyback on and cause and disrupt violence. With violence. Mr. Wheeler, I think you have stumbled upon the answer that everyone was trying to shove in front of your nose, which you're just half an inch shy of seeing. See, potentially dangerous and volatile is what happens when you continually let another organization that is not holding the rally show up and cause violence that is potentially dangerous and volatile and is dangerous and becomes dangerous every single time. He goes on to say that adding to the noise doesn't do anything to support or help the efforts that are going on here in Portland, Wheeler told CNN. What efforts, Wheeler? What fucking efforts? The efforts to allow Antifa to continue acting as they do, as you shrug your shoulders and appease and appeal to their cause because you think they're going to vote for you the next re-election. I don't think they give a damn about you. And in fact, I'm pretty goddamn sure they didn't give a damn about you when they stormed City Hall asking for your head. The FBI, Oregon State Police, and a number of surrounding police departments helped keep the peace. In light of recent mass shootings around the country, we prepared for the worst. I'm relieved that no lives were lost, Wheeler said. Portland police did an extraordinary job keeping the peace, protecting life, and responding to violence. We are very grateful. I would be grateful too, Wheeler, considering you did not much to help the situation and have not done much in the recent months during all these mass shootings where you're probably thinking to yourself, uh-oh, maybe I made a boo-boo. Maybe I shouldn't have been so relaxed on Antifa. Maybe I shouldn't have had to have responded to the noise that I have created. Maybe if I hadn't created any noise by allowing Antifa to run amok, maybe I wouldn't be responding to it and having to backtrack and mitigate the damage and do damage control like I'm having to do right now. Maybe this is all a bad dream, and if I pinch myself, I'll wake up. That's just spitballing here, folks. Maybe he did. I know I'd be if I was up for re-election and I'd made the series of mistakes that I have made running the city. Anyways, folks, that's the end of the article here. I was planning on doing a second article, but I'm a little bit behind the time, and I'm trying to get this uploaded today on a Wednesday. Worst day of all days to do a weekly news report and commentary. But I hoped you liked it, and I apologized for the poor quality as I'm still doing this from my cell phone in my hospital room where I'm stuck for the next week or so. It'll be some time before I get a laptop and a decent microphone and recording system back together. But hopefully soon in the near future, the next set of videos I'll have coming up in the coming months will be of better quality. And now I will finish off this article and have my pre-recorded goodbye finish off the video. Well, that was it for this week, and thank you all for joining me. I know that I mentioned in the beginning that this was just one of a few stories I'd be covering, or at least implied that, but this is only going to be one story this week, as I am still getting the hang of my editing apps, and I'm trying to keep my videos down to a minimum of under 15 minutes, if not under 10 minutes. I know I have a lot to say, and some of it may not need be said, but at the moment, once I get my legs out underneath me, pardon the little pun there, like making a little jab at the fact that I'm in a wheelchair now. Thank you all for joining me for this edition of the Weekly Foxtrot. Please like, comment, and or subscribe. And remember, de nunquam continuo unam duaseve uncias, nunquam desiste. Never give up, never give an inch. Thank you very much, and have a good night.